nagade na makute na manese goro po umalala shake oh nagade hey wala na
I think we all know about this clown. So, and this might be kind of old hat to some folks, but my goal here is to give some detail about the guy. Detail that most people might not know. I mean, sure, he's a crook, but in this video, I'm going to give a little info on why he is and what he does. Also, I've done another video about the occult roots of televangelists, where I go into the occult aspects of what these guys do, what this guy does. So you might want to check that out. However, in this video, I'm only going to give a brief overview of the occult angle. But stay to the end, because I'll do a little more about the occult aspect at the very end. Anyway, Copeland is a polemic of the word faith movement, which had its nascence with the religion of theosophy, created by Helena Blavatsky in the early 19th century. She was a literal Luciferian and even published a magazine called Lucifer. One major point of contention in his promotion of prosperity theology is his promotion of prosperity theology, which teaches that faith, positive confession, and donations to ministries, yes, can lead to financial wealth and physical health as a sign of divine favor. And this comes directly from Blavatsky's law of attraction. That is it. Essentially, as I see it, he's trying to sell salvation. You know, he's trying to sell the good grace of God.
Oktav, was ist los? Woher kommt die Schießerei?
Mein Führer, darf ich Ihnen zum Geburtstag gratulieren?
Nur um zu lernen, wie man Messer und Gabel hält.
Führer, wir haben noch keine Meldung. Ich spreche gerade mit Koller.
Koller, geben Sie mir Koller. Koller.
hey
Sie wissen, dass Berlin unter Artilleriefeuer liegt.
and that thing is a curse of the law and we've been redeemed from the curse of the law.
One bone of contention with this guy is his lack of financial transparency. Kenneth Copeland Ministries has been investigated by the U.S. Senate for its finances, with concerns about how donations are used, especially given the tax-exempt status of religious organizations. While no formal charges resulted, the scrutiny reinforced perceptions of opacity and self-enrichment. So anyway, Grassley here, he had a committee, and they investigated several televangelists. Copeland was one of them. And Copeland, he stonewalled it. He played his cards right to the chest, and he didn't cooperate. Now, that right there should be a red flag. After all, if he doesn't have anything to hide, then why not cooperate?
I'm not missing that dedication in Jerusalem. Without the airplane that we have that I bought from Tyler Perry, and I didn't pay anywhere. Tyler's one of the greatest guys. He made that airplane so cheap for me, I couldn't help but buy it.
Now, this guy's opulent lifestyle really raises some eyebrows to me. I mean, my goodness. He has a fleet of private jets, and that's been a long-standing bone of contention. Copeland has owned several aircraft, including a Cessna Citation Bravo and a Gulfstream 5. In 2018, Kenneth Copeland Ministries launched a fundraising campaign to raise $19.5 million for a new jet, claiming it was needed to spread the gospel globally. Critics, including watchdog groups like Trinity Foundation, pointed out the opacity. No clear breakdown was provided on how much had already been spent maintaining the existing fleet, or why commercial flights wouldn't suffice. So in other words, he's already got some airplanes, and, why couldn't he just get in a commercial flight and fly there? But no, he has to have a new airplane, a new jet. My speculation, and it's that's all it is. It's speculation, supposition, but I wouldn't be a bit surprised if he weren't using those airplanes for something illicit, maybe smuggling drugs, maybe somehow laundering money, somehow. But, you know, like I say, it's just speculation. There's no evidence to suggest that he does that, but you know, knowing what I know about the way the world works, I did one just recently on churches laundering money. And big mega churches are ideal for doing that. So I'm dubious about this guy. I'm thinking maybe he's up to something shady.
The more we learn about this covenant of God. Don't ever do it. Don't ever feel sorry for yourself. Don't ever do it!
On top of those planes, he's got him an 18,000 square foot house. There it is right there. There's a picture of the inside with the jacuzzi, the jacuzzi, and a pool indoors. And oh my goodness, he calls that a parsonage. Now, most churches keep a little house for their preacher to live, you know, rent-free. It's a way of keeping costs down. Don't have to pay the preacher so much. But 18,000 square feet. Real estate dealings also raise red flags. Kenneth Copeland Ministries owns a sprawling 1,500-acre campus near Fort Worth, Texas, including an airstrip, a church, and Copeland's residence, all tax-exempt as ministry property. In 2008, a local appraisal district challenged the tax-exempt status of some of his assets, like the mansion. But Kenneth Copeland Ministries successfully defended its classification. Critics question how much of this property benefits Copeland personally versus the ministry's stated mission. Without public financial statement, there's no way to verify what portion of the donations support these holdings or whether they're primarily for Copeland's comfort rather than outreach. Now, come on, folks. Can anyone deny that that house is for his comfort? Yeah, I think he could get real comfortable in that thing. Now, see, I live in Fort Worth myself, and, you know, property values aren't nearly as high here as they are in a lot of other places. And by our standards, that is just unbelievably, obscenely. You know, a lot of people would see the price tag on it, and they'd think it wasn't that much if you lived in California, if you lived in, you know, some highly desirable location. But here in Fort Worth, that the money he paid for that house is astronomical. And, you know, outreaches. It talked about whether or not it's done for an outreach. How in the world could that be done for an outreach, that house? And we'll talk a little bit about these outreaches in a minute.
COVID-19! COVID-19!
Yeah, man, I bet you he does a lot of outreaching in that house, reaching out and grabbing folks by the booty. I bet you he does. And he probably runs around naked in that place. Yeah, he runs around all naked and outreaching on folks and just being just a hedonist. He's just one of them old feely cracks. Now, Copeland's personal net worth is most commonly pegged at around $300 million, a figure cited by sources like Celebrity Net Worth and various news outlets over the years. Some push it higher, up to $750 million, or even $800 million, based on older reports like the 2015 Dallas Morning News investigation. Now, folks, that's his personal wealth. That's not the ministry. That's how much he personally is worth. The absence of detailed income and expenditure reports, standard for many large nonprofits, make it impossible to tell how much goes to salaries, travel, family, etc. Now, Harry Truman, former president, he made a statement that is absolutely true. anyone who gets rich in politics is a crook. Okay, well, I don't see why you couldn't transpose that little aphorism onto religion. Anyone who gets rich with religion is a crook. The mere fact that he's worth that much money tells me he's a crook. What does he do to make $300 million bucks? He'll say stuff like books. He sells books. $300 million worth? You know, books are book deals are about the most, they're the oldest way of laundering money back to somebody that there is. You know, you do a book and you print a bunch of books up, and then you have somebody buy them up in bulk, and that way you get to put the money in your pocket, and the books just wind up getting thrown away somewhere. You know, that's just an old trick. Politicians do that when they have their book deals after they retire or something. They'll have them a book deal. They'll do a book, and then some third party, some NGO will take the money and buy up a bunch of copies of the books. And that could be one way of laundering the church's money too. Of course, there's no evidence to suggest that he does this, but you could take all that money, put it into some nonprofit charity, which in turn puts it into another nonprofit charity, shell companies, so to speak, and then take that money and buy up tons of the books, and that way you'd be putting it right back in your own pocket from the ministry. $300 million bucks is a hell of a lot of money. And $800 million, that's almost $1 billion. $1 billion talking on the TV, blabbing your gums.
News 8 that first reported on the private use of the Copeland Ministries' $20 million jet and trips made to a ski resort and exotic game hunting ranch. But the real turbulence for the Copeland's ministry may come from within the security gates of his Eagle Mountain Church and ministry headquarters north of Fort Worth.
I started going to church there in 1994. In 90 days, I started realizing this was a huge mistake.
That's the one time I saw the man was at the Christmas party.
I was in an elevator with Gloria once.
It was an unwritten law that if Kenneth or Gloria walk through the office, you don't see them, you don't speak to them.
Oh, and then, you know, think about it, folks. Does that guy look like he's almost 90 years old? Huh? What's he doing to look that young? And I ain't talking about plastic surgery. Do a little research on how the uber wealthy manage to live as long as they do. Look that up. I'm not going to go into it here. It's too dark. But finally, a smaller but telling incident came in 2020 when Copeland claimed his ministry was hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic, asking for donations to stay afloat. Yet, no evidence was offered to show a financial shortfall. No balance sheets, no loss statements. Skeptics noted that his lifestyle appeared unchanged, with no jets sold or luxury scaled back, suggesting either the plea was exaggerated or the ministry had ample reserves it wasn't disclosing. You know, you'd think with all that money, you'd be putting the money into, you know, spreading the gospel. But, you know, he doesn't really do that. I suppose he does some. I mean, he flits and flights off to places all around the globe in those jets where he supposedly is doing, you know, a ministry, an outreach. But when he goes there, from what I've seen, he only speaks to the people who are already his sycophants. It's like he's a sales manager talking to his salesman, getting them goosed up to go out and sell. That's the impression that I get. If you've ever worked in a company that has a lot of sales, that's what they do, man. The head of the sales department will go around the country and get all the salesmen together, and they'll have them a great big shindig and talk about it and get them all goosed up and enthusiastic to go out and sell more. And that's the impression I'm getting from what he does overseas. because he doesn't, from what I've seen in research, he doesn't really talk to anybody who doesn't already know who he is and isn't already behind him. I think the only gospel talk he does, I guess, would be on the television, on the big screen. But see, he can do that. He can do that in a $1,000 studio. He could do that literally in this bedroom. I could do that. If I were a good enough preacher, I could do the same thing right here in my bedroom. Why does he have to have an airplane? Why does he have to, this just does not add up, people.
He's pretending to cut himself here. He's actually cutting.
And then I would do the same.
Jesus said, "Take this cup. This is my blood of the new covenant." And I want you to be this way every time you take communion, and you ought to take it a lot.
This is Kenneth Copeland drinking a cup that he has symbolically filled with his own blood and the blood of some other dude. Then he tells you to do communion like this? This is satanic.
And I guess it all just comes down to whether or not he's doing anything illegal. I mean, if he's not doing anything illegal, then I suppose, you have to begrudgingly just tolerate him. I mean, but see, once again, I just don't see. Where there's smoke, there's fire, man. If he's not disclosing his finances to anyone, then I'll bet you there's something going on. There just has to be. Now back to Helena Blavatsky and Theosophy. She started a religion that's been very influential over the years. The Theosophical Society is the only religious organization in the world that actually has a chapel in the United Nations, which tells you something. Anyway, both place a heavy emphasis on the power of the mind or spoken word to influence the material and spiritual worlds. And, the Word of Faith preachers get this directly from her. There's an unbroken line of people right back to her. I did a video called The Occult Origins of Televangelism, and I spelled it all out. I researched it, and there's an unbroken line of charlatans that go from her right up to Kenneth Copeland and Joel Osteen and all those scum suckers. Another similarity is the elevated view of human divinity or potential. Theosophy posits that humans are sparks of the divine. Word of Faith preachers often teach that believers are little gods or co-creators with God. Now, I think that there might be something to that. I think, maybe. Not all of their beliefs can be wrong. Otherwise, nobody would follow them. They also share a metaphysical outlook on reality, treating the spiritual as more real than the physical. And they both have their approaches to health and wealth that align. And as I see it, he's selling salvation. He's selling snake oil, pie in the sky. There will be pie in the sky when you die by and by. Anyway, maybe I shouldn't be so negative on these people. Maybe I shouldn't be so insulting. I'm sure he doesn't run around naked in that mansion. I'm sure he doesn't. He probably runs around naked out in the graveyard somewhere. Hell, there's a video I'm going to show of the guy actually drinking blood on camera. Oh my goodness. Anyway, heaven help us.